Welcome to the Early Bird Podcast for Friday's MLB slate. Of course, we are sponsored by SuperDraft. Adam, man, as always, appreciate time. Always great to do a show with you, talk about what's coming up on Friday's slate of MLB action, man. How's the week been treating you DFS-wise?
Pretty decent. Started out pretty poorly. Been a rough start to the MLB and NBA seasons for me, but had a nice League of Legends win last night, so that helped balance it out a little bit.
I've never gotten the League of Legends. I couldn't do it.
I put it off for about as long as I could. I think everyone started playing, during quarantine, and I said I wouldn't. And then a month and a half or 2 months in, I finally started playing, and now it's like one of my most profitable sports. So I'm glad I did.
Yeah, I mean, if you had told me we got to play T.J. Warren of the Pacers every night, if you had told me that a week ago, I might have said you're crazy.
Yeah, that's a big reason why NBA season hasn't started very well for me.
Yeah, but of course we are here to talk about MLB coming up on Friday. Of course, we're sponsored by SuperDraft. The future of daily fantasy sports has arrived. You want to experience SuperDraft's exclusive game mode multiplier, say goodbye to salary restrictions, and a load of lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge, draft any player you want, and build your very own dream team. Countless lineup possibilities. Let you experience daily fantasy sports the way you want. SuperDraft offers contests for NBA, MLB, PGA, NASCAR, and MMA, so you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Sign up for SuperDraft today using the promo code Awesemo10, and it's $10 free on your first deposit of $10 or more, and $20 total free on your first deposit of $100 or more. Download in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. SuperDraft, no limits, more winning. Of course, we're here talking baseball, and baseball is back, and get access to all the great Awesemo Plus tools and content for MLB DFS with a Awesemo Plus MLB Weekly Pass for $15.95. This includes full access to Awesemo's leading player projections, ownership projections, and the all-new Top Pitchers tool, and more. Get your pass today. Of course, we got a big slate coming up on Friday, all starting off at 6:05, the Orioles and the Nats.
Yeah, not on the DraftKings slate. I think it's on the FanDuel slate maybe. But yeah, Tommy Malone taking on Annabelle Sanchez. Obviously a pretty decent matchup for Sanchez, but not a great strikeout pitcher there. Tommy Malone has actually looked pretty decent this year. Strikeout stuff's been pretty good. Nats lineup's watered down a little bit, but I still just have trouble trusting him on a full slate. I mean, you have 13 or 14 games here. Through his first couple of starts, he struck out 35% of righties, 40% of lefties. But, you go back and look at last year, only 18% of righties. Not quite ready to buy into him on a full slate. So not really looking to the pitching here.
You mentioned about not part of the main slate on DraftKings. Neither is the Yankees and the Rays. That's obviously a game I'll be paying attention to as a Rays fan. Blake Snell and Tanaka going. I guess, obviously the thing here in Tampa about Blake Snell has just been about, him getting stretched out enough to where he would be a viable option in DFS.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously a really, really good pitcher, but he had said coming into the season that he thought it would take him 3 or 4 weeks until he was fully stretched out. And obviously it's really difficult to be paying for someone that, carries the salary that Blake Snell does until he shows that he is ready to go.
Yeah, and we mentioned not on the DraftKings main slate there. Someone's playing over FanDuel. Is there a batter you like in this game?
Not really. I mean, you have the park's not great for hitting, playing indoors in Tropicana. Blake Snell obviously is really good. I mean, you have a lot of right-handed power on the Yankees, but it's not like it's a great matchup. Tanaka is good as well. Can give up home runs at times if you wanted to look to one of the left-handed power bats there. But, I really just have a ton of respect for both pitchers.
And, of course, the main slate does start at 7:05. We got 13 games part of the main slate. 2 games that start at 7:05. First up, we got the Tigers and the Pirates. As we do this show, the Tigers have not officially come out and said who their starter is going to be.
Yeah, which always, makes it makes it helpful. I'm seeing Matt Boyd potentially listed. If it is Boyd, I think he's a pretty interesting option. He's off to a slow start this year, but we do know that he has good stuff. He can pile up strikeouts. It looks like they have actually announced that it will be Boyd. He's made 2 starts this season. He hasn't been good in either one, but he did throw 88 and 89 pitches. The Pirates are not a great offense, not the easiest strikeouts in the world, but probably just a matter of time before Boyd starts getting it together. So obviously some risk because he's still not really discounted, and he has looked really, really bad this year. But last year he struck out 30.5% of righties. So I think that if ownership is off of him a little bit, because of his recent performances that it's a good spot to look to in tournaments, because the chances are good that sooner than later he's going to go back to what he has been in the past.
Obviously, we talk about how bad the Pirates' offense can be. Is there anyone at all that intrigues you with their offense in this spot?
Josh Bell's still priced up. He's always the one guy that I would look to, especially in the lefty-lefty matchup. You know, it kind of takes a lot of the shine off of most of these hitters because Frazier, Moran, Gregory Polanco are all left-handed. You know, Kevin Newman's going to be a decent value at shortstop, probably batting second, 3,600 on DraftKings. He'd probably be the guy that I get to the most from this Pittsburgh lineup.
Then we got the Braves and the Phillies. Of course, the Braves made some roster moves yesterday. Nick Markakis now back into the fold here. You got Wright going for the Braves, and Velasquez going for the Pirates, or the Phillies, excuse me.
Yeah, I think a pretty tough spot for both pitchers. Kyle Wright was decent his last time out. Atlanta's been has been keeping their young pitchers on pretty short leashes, though. 54 pitches and then 75 pitches for Kyle Wright in his first two starts. Now you get a Phillies offense in Philadelphia, good hitter's park. I think it's going to be pretty tough to trust Wright. And then on the other side in Velasquez, you have a pitcher that does have good strikeout stuff, really hard thrower, but also struggles with home runs, struggles with left-handed power. You have Freddy Freeman in this lineup. As you mentioned, you have Markakis back. A predominantly right-handed lineup, which would make it somewhat appealing for a cheap Velasquez, but just a lot of really good fastball hitters in this lineup as well. I think I would rather be looking to bats in this game, given the fact that both of these pitchers can struggle with power, especially Velasquez, and this park plays up power.
Yeah, I mean, Velasquez, at 6,900 on DK, I was going to ask you, would you at all consider him in that second pitcher spot, the fact that the Braves lead the league in strikeouts?
I don't expect that to continue, though. I mean, you have some guys in there that'll strike out in Acuna, Dansby Swanson, okay. But Markakis being back should knock the strikeouts down. He's always been a guy that puts the ball in play. Freddie Freeman's a tough strikeout. It's not the same Braves lineup as it has been in the past, where it's really tough to strike out. Like there are more strikeouts than in previous years, but I still think that the strikeout numbers come down. As far as Velasquez at that price tag on DraftKings, I do think it's viable just because he does have good strikeout stuff. Last year, he struck out 26% of right-handed hitters, and as I mentioned, it's going to probably be a predominantly right-handed lineup. So it's a boom or bust spot. If I had to only pick one side of it, I think I would look to the Braves bats, but he does at least carry more strikeout upside than most pitchers you're going to find at that price point.
You got the Marlins and the Mets. Alcantara going for the Marlins, Wacko going for the Mets. The Marlins are back playing baseball, I guess, for now. I mean, and now I know MLB came out earlier today, and basically all these makeup games are going to have. As we're doing this show, they're up on the Orioles 6-4. Kind of what's your thoughts on this one, and what's your take on the Marlins right now in terms of DFS?
I think they're better than normal, or better than they have been in the past. Like, they're still obviously not a good team, but from a DFS standpoint, they used to be a team where it was just kind of like, even if they have a good game, they don't really have anybody on their team that has a lot of upside. Now you do have someone in Jonathan Villar that has that stolen base upside. You have a couple of power bats in Jesus Aguilar and Corey Dickerson. So the lineup is definitely more formidable than we'd seen in recent years. I would say that I'm getting to Miami stacks more now than I normally do. Still, obviously, never feels great to make them a big part of your plans, but they're a little bit more appealing. As far as this game, I don't find either pitcher particularly good. Sandy Alcantara maybe, in a couple of years kind of puts it together, but not great strikeout stuff right now. Does walk a lot of guys, and I think the Mets lineup is a good one. So definitely have interest in their bats. And then on the other side, Michael Wacko last year only struck out 21% of hitters. Generally lets you put the ball in play. Again, I'm not excited to get to Miami bats, but one-offing Corey Dickerson from the left side or Jonathan Villar for some stolen bases, I think makes sense.
You mentioned about the stacks there, and obviously we're always looking at those stacks. Either one of these teams even consideration on Friday as a stack?
Yeah, I think the Mets are. I mean, it's a team that it's a pretty nice combination of cheap pricing and power bats really throughout the lineup. Even you look down to the number 7 spot in the order or the 8 spot, depending where he ends up. Wilson Ramos has more power than most catchers, especially most cheap catchers. Michael Conforto is a really good hitter and probably shouldn't ever be $4,200 on DraftKings. Even Pete Alonso is only $4,700. Brandon Nimmo is 3,400. That's going to be one of the best values on the slate, most likely, if he's leading off. Jeff McNeil may be back in the lineup as well. The Mets are a pretty deep offense, even with Yoenis Cespedes deciding that he's not playing baseball this season. It's still a pretty deep offense. It's still a team that I think offers a lot of upside and is pretty cheap.
That Cespedes situation is so weird to me.
I'm glad he ended up being okay. Like, the way that they announced it was just so weird. Like, he's not here. We can't get in touch with him. We don't know.
Yeah, like you read their statement, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, he's opting out of the season. You're like, okay, there's got to be some miscommunication somewhere in this chain.
Well, they said that they sent security to his hotel room and that he was gone. All of his stuff was gone, and he just like dipped out. And his agent told them mid-game that he wasn't playing.
Like, you would think that there would be someone in the hotel that would go, hey, he's got all of his bags on him, and he's clearly not going to the ballpark.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone would notice. You would think someone would notice the big, 6'3", 240-pound guy walking out with like 8 bags.
You would think some team security would notice that. You got to imagine team security's at the hotel 24/7. Then we got the Blue Jays and the Red Sox. Rourke going for the Blue Jays, 1-0 with a 1.80 ERA. Weber for the Red Sox, 0-2 with a 11.57 ERA.
Yeah, rough start to the season for Weber, as has been the case for most Red Sox pitchers not named Nate Eovaldi. The Blue Jays have strikeouts in their lineup, but they also have tons of power. They're a team that I'll definitely be looking to here. Another team that, the top of the order is kind of expensive, but you get some savings towards the bottom with Travis Shaw, with Randall Grichuk, with Rowdy Tellez, and it'll help you balance out this lineup so that you can get some good pitching with it, get some good one-offs with it. Ryan Weber, certainly not a pitcher I'm shying away from. On the other side, Tanner Roark is a decent pitcher. Strikeout stuff is generally better against righties than lefties. Last year, he actually was balanced a little bit more than normal, coming in around 22% to both sides. It's not the same Red Sox lineup, obviously, without Mookie Betts. That's a pretty big hole, but it's still a good lineup. It's not one that I'm really looking to pick on, especially when Roark's not that cheap.
Would you pay up for JD Martinez?
I think it's never a bad idea, but it's not someone that really stands out to me because Roark is better against righties, and obviously in the outfield on a 13-game slate, you're just going to have a ton of really good options.
At some point, he's got to hit a home run.
Yeah, you would. I mean, yeah, it's coming.
You just want to make sure that's in there. The Twins and the Royals. Smeltzer going for the Twins and Junis going for the Royals. Is there a bat that you like in this one?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. Jake Junis is he can get some strikeouts. He has a good slider. He should probably be a better pitcher than he is, but gives up a lot of power, and that's not really something that you want when you're going up against this Minnesota team. So I like pretty much all the Minnesota bats. They're also not that expensive. Jorge Polanco really stands out at 3,900 on DraftKings. On the other side, you have Devin Smeltzer going for the Twins. He is a lefty, so you're going to get the platoon advantage for Salvador Perez behind the plate, for Jorge Soler, for Whit Merrifield. Their prices have finally been bumped up, so they don't stand out like they did earlier in the year. I do think Perez, in particular, because the catcher position always is pretty shallow, will look like a good play.
Twins favorite stack for you on Friday?
Yeah, they'll be up there just because, again, Junis, not great strikeout stuff. Last season, he can't find the page that I had open with last season's stats, but if I remember correctly, around like a 23% strikeout percentage for Junis. But he also gives up home runs. So I think that for a team like Minnesota that doesn't have a ton of strikeouts in the lineup and does have a lot of power, that sets up really, really nicely.
Then we got the Reds and the Brewers. Bauer going for the Reds. He's 1-0 with a .68 ERA, and Lauer going for the Brewers.
Yeah, Bauer, obviously a really good pitcher. He's also priced up. This Brewers lineup not as dangerous as we'd seen in recent years. Lorenzo Cain obviously opted out. Ryan Braun's not in the lineup. Eric Sogard doesn't strike out a ton. Yelich is obviously a really tough out, but if you can get past those guys, there's a ton of strikeouts here. Keston Hiura is a good hitter, but he strikes out a lot. Obviously, El Garcia okay, so will Smoke, so will Morrison. I think it's a good spot for Bauer. A 4.1 implied total right now for Milwaukee, a little bit higher than I expected, but I think that it sets up pretty nicely for Bauer.
Bauer's the highest salary pitcher on the Friday slate at 10.6 on DK. Next highest is Zach Greinke at 10-2. Is kind of your thought is everyone's just going to be so highly on power that maybe if you want to be contrarian, you go away from him?
I mean, I think it's certainly doable, especially when you're talking about expensive pitching in tournaments. That's something that I'm always fine with doing because I think that tournaments are usually won with bats, and there's not that many slates where the most expensive pitcher actually goes out there and puts up a score that you have to have. He can go get 25 points and you can beat that. With bats, it's only when he really goes and gets that 35 to 40 point game that you're in trouble if you don't have him. That being said, though, I think there probably, just from looking through so far, I think there probably is enough hitter value that it won't be that tough to get to Bauer and still make lineups that you like. A lot of these stacks that I've thought have been in good spots so far, even if the whole stack isn't cheap, there's enough cheap hitters down in like the 6 and 7 spots that I don't think it'll be that tough to get to Bauer.
Then we got the Indians and the White Sox. I'm always looking at that Indians infield of Lindor and Ramirez. They're always kind of two guys that seems like every day I'm always looking at them when the Indians are playing. What's your thoughts about this matchup?
Yeah, it's that part of their lineup is still really good. They've kind of lost everything that was going around it. You're getting Dylan Cease going for the White Sox. He's coming off of a 6-inning start where he threw 83 pitches, struck out 4 against Kansas City. This will be his second time facing Cleveland this year. Had a really rough start his first time out. 2 1/3, 4 earned runs, only threw 64 pitches. He's a talented pitcher. He's got really, really good stuff. Still has control issues, and he's really just not at a price point that I'm going to want to get to against Cleveland. If you were giving him to me at like the Vince as $6,900 price point, I would be interested in just betting on his talent and hoping for the best. But at 8,600, you're basically paying for his talent and not getting any sort of discount for the tough matchup against the Indians.
And of course, if you're interested in the MLB ownership projections, go over to Awesemo.com right now. That is our free premium content up. MLB ownership projections. Maybe you want to see how some of those hitters may stack up and what they're going to be in terms of ownership. Then we got the Cubs and the Cardinals. John Lester on the mound for the Cubs, 1-0 with a .82. Flaherty going for the Cardinals. He's 1-0 with a 2.57.
Yeah, John Lester, pretty much one of my least favorite DFS pitchers. I like taking bats against him. I just haven't thought he was good for years. Tends to be better at getting outs, better being a real life pitcher than a fantasy pitcher. Doesn't strike out a lot of guys. You should get a pretty right-handed heavy lineup for the Cardinals here, which won't do him any favors. On the other side, do we have, I don't see a pitcher listed for so I'm seeing Flaherty will make his next start Sunday or Monday.
The MLB, that's when I pulled the pictures up here earlier today, he was listed as the starter on MLB.com.
Daniel Ponce de Leon now for the Cardinals. 85 pitches, 3 2/3 innings against Minnesota, his last start. It's a decent price point at 7,500 on DraftKings. The Cubs are a pretty good offense, not the scariest. Maybe it's definitely not. Ponce de Leon is not someone that's going to jump out to me as someone that I want to roster. I will say, though, that the price point is one where once it comes down to roster construction, I wouldn't be surprised if I start getting him at 7,500 just because he's cheap.
You mentioned about the right-handed bats with the Cardinals. Obviously, Paul Goldschmidt's going to be the one that is going to come to everyone's mind. Is there a right-handed bat that people should be considering?
Obviously it's Goldschmidt, but you also, I guess we have to. The lineup's going to look really weird because they're dealing with the coronavirus outbreak. So Paul DeJong is going to be out, I believe. Yadi Molina, I believe, is out. Mm-hmm. That's going to water the lineup down a lot for Lester. So I guess actually, he's expensive is the problem. He's 9,100 on DraftKings, I think. There's a chance, though, that you get a really bad Cardinals lineup here. So I think Tyler O'Neill should be in the lineup. He's 3K on DraftKings. This is a guy that does have power. And actually has some speed too. He's someone that I think can do some damage against Lester, and you're not really even sacrificing upside by rostering him.
In terms of bats on the Cubs side, and we talked a lot about the bats on the Cardinals side, is there somebody that that's got you intrigued?
Nobody in particular, I don't think. I think that Ponce de Leon is just a pretty decent pitcher. Going back and looking at what he did last year, small sample size in the majors, he actually had a much higher strikeout percentage against lefties, but held lefties to a 117 expected ISO. Righties were at 167. Pricing on the Cubs doesn't look, super favorable. You do have a $2,600 Jason Hayward, which is certainly a spot you can look to if you're trying to get to Bauer and another relatively expensive pitcher.
Then we got the Angels and the Rangers. Lyle's going for the Rangers, 0-1 with a 6 ERA, and Canning 0-1 with a 3.38 going for the Angels.
Yeah, Garrett Canning is a young pitcher that I think actually has really good stuff. He dealt with an injury last year, but 82 and 86 pitches his first two starts this year, 4 2/3, and then 6 innings, coming off of a 6-inning, 1 earned run, 5 strikeout start against Houston where he was good. He's 8,200, which is a pretty decent price tag here against a Texas offense that is just bad. You have Joey Gallo, you have Shin-Soo Choo, and outside of that, there's not a whole lot here. There are strikeouts in this lineup. When Gallo's not hitting home runs, he's striking out constantly. If Odor's back, he strikes out. Choo will strike out. Todd Frazier will strike out. Chirinos is a high K guy. So there's plenty of strikeouts in this lineup for Canning to pick up. Last season, in his limited time in the majors, he did strike out 26% of righties, 24% of lefties, so pretty good, against both sides of the plate. I think Canning looks like a good option, and also obviously keep in mind that this game, they're no longer playing. They have the new park in Texas, so good chance the roof will be closed here, which plays in pitcher's favor as well.
Yeah, it's right. It's right next to Cowboy Stadium. It's
okay.
I've done several games at Cowboy Stadium. It's interesting how that whole Cowboy Stadium area has just like, it used to be that was the only thing there, and now they've built that whole thing up. It's amazing what they've done there. Obviously Trout's going to be the guy that everyone's always going to look at, and he's priced at 5,900 on DK. Any other bats interest you in that lineup?
We got Shohei Ohtani back in the lineup yesterday. He had been day to day with his arm injury, so it sounds like he's done pitching till at least next year, and he'll just be hitting. That's good from a DFS standpoint because this guy's an excellent hitter, and him getting more at bats can only do good things for him. So 4,700 for him on DraftKings, while it's not a cheap price, it's still a good price for a guy with as much power as he has. He really, based on talent, should be in that low to mid 5K range. So Ohtani stands out where, he's $700 less than Rendon. He's $1,200 less than Trout. He's got too much power for that.
D-backs in the pods, 9:10 p.m. Eastern time. Weaver going for the D-backs and Davies for the pods.
Yeah, Davies, not a guy that gets many strikeouts, not someone that you're really going to be interested in for DFS. Luke Weaver coming off of a solid strikeout season. He was someone that when he first came up with the Cardinals, I really didn't believe in, but he turned things around. Last year, he struck out 28.5% of righties, 25% of lefties. The Padres certainly have some dangerous bats in their lineup, but they do have strikeouts in there too. Tatis, Pham, these guys will strike out. Will Myers is a high K guy. Weaver is not expensive. He's only 8K on DraftKings. I think that's probably going to be one of the better projected mid-range pitchers. I think you probably get some ownership going there, coming off of a start where he only went 4 innings, gave up 6 earned, but it was against the Dodgers. He did throw 86 pitches, which is my primary takeaway, that he stretched out. He has been really bad in both starts this year, one coming against the Padres where he got lit up for 6 runs, and then the one against the Dodgers. But obviously I'm more interested in the body of work that Weaver has, over more than 2 starts, and I think the salary is very affordable.
In terms of bats in this game, what should people be looking at?
The Diamondbacks, I think. So I don't think this game will get too much ownership just, at first glance because it's a relatively low total. But I think the Diamondbacks are probably going to be a good team to stack in your large field tournaments. They're not very expensive, and Davies doesn't miss a lot of bats. But there's a lot of power and speed on this Diamondbacks team. They're not a team that's going to jump off the page very often, and that'll keep their ownership down. But when you just look at this lineup, there's a lot of good hitters in it that are affordable. So I think getting them as low on stacks in general is going to be a good strategy this year, and I think that today's no exception.
Mentioned about Greinke being the second highest salary pitcher on the slate, going for the Astros, going up against the A's. Bassett for the A's, 1-0 with a .93 ERA. Greinke 0-0 with a 5 ERA.
Yeah, Greinke, if I remember correctly, took a no-hitter for a while in one of his 2 starts this year, but neither one ended up being very good. 3 earned runs and 3 1/3 against Seattle, 2 earned runs and 5 2/3 against the Angels. Threw 83 pitches his last time out. It's always going to be tough for me to pay this salary for Greinke. He's priced for his ability to limit runs, but obviously in DFS, you only get so many points for limiting runs. Most of the points are going to come from strikeouts, and I just don't think he really compares to Bauer at that price point in terms of strikeout stuff. Last season, he struck out 22.5% of righties, which was 6 points lower, or sorry, of hitters, overall hitters, which was 6 points lower than Bauer. It is a good strikeout matchup against Oakland. A lot of power in that lineup, but also a lot of strikeouts. But I just have trouble thinking that he has as much upside as Bauer does.
In terms of bats and maybe some under the radar bats.
Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot here that I'm going to like. I mean, you can make an argument for both of these teams just because they do have so much power. But this game's in Oakland, which isn't a good park for hitting, in large part because there's so much foul territory. Balls that would be out of play in other stadiums are outs here, and it's hard to string big innings together. But also expected to be in the low to mid 60s. Ball's not going to fly like it will in some of these other stadiums where it's hot and humid. Greinke obviously is a good pitcher. Chris Bassett isn't bad either. Outside of the obvious that anytime you're talking about a team that has as much power as the Astros or as much power as the A's, they give you tournament upside. There's nothing that makes me think this is a spot where they're particularly likely to do well.
Would this be a game you would say not a favorite stack because just of the park?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's basically the way that I would end up getting to these teams is if, like Alex's top stack tool going into lock, has these teams that, like 1 or 2% ownership. Just based on how much power they have, they're going to have a higher chance of success than that. But, just kind of looking at it early on, neither of them jumps out as something that I'm targeting for any reason other than low ownership.
Yeah, you have to use all those tools that we have over at Awesemo.com. It can help you build that quality lineup that you're all looking for. 2 more games left. We got the Rockies and the Mariners. What's your thoughts on this one?
I think Yusei Kikuchi probably will be my highest owned pitcher. I normally wouldn't say something like that, this early on, because obviously I haven't done any sort of lineup building, but this is a guy who had some fanfare when he came over from Japan, really struggled last year, came out this year averaging 95 miles an hour on his fastball, which is up 2 or 3 miles an hour from last year. And he got lit up by the Astros in his first start. Second start, though, struck out 9 A's in 6 innings. He's 5K on DraftKings, pitching in Seattle. So you're getting against the Rockies. So you're getting Colorado outside of Coors. You basically have 2.5 right-handed bats that you have to be concerned about here. You have Trevor Story, you have Nolan Arenado, and then you have Matt Kemp and Chris Owings, which, whatever, if they have a good game, then so be it. But other than that, the good hitters on the Rockies are left-handed. So you have the platoon advantage for Kikuchi. I really think it's just a mispricing. It's almost like the DraftKings algorithm thinks this game is in Coors or something.
In terms of the Mariners' bats, I mean, you mentioned how much you love the pitching here, but what about their bats?
Yeah, not as excited about the bats, but they are pretty cheap. Antonio Senzatella, not a great pitcher, doesn't miss a ton of bats. He did make some adjustments in the offseason and looks like maybe he's going to be a little bit better this year. He's throwing hard. His strikeouts have been up a little bit, and that's great. But you do have pretty favorable pricing on J.P. Crawford. Kyle Lewis has a lot of power and is only 3,900. A mini stack consisting of like Crawford, Lewis, Seeger, or Crawford, Seeger, Vogelbach, something like that is a decent way to save money here.
In the final game of the night is the Giants and the Dodgers. Samardzija going for the Giants. Are you looking at these Dodger bats as try to target against Samardzija?
Yeah, Samardzija outside of San Francisco is a spot that I normally like to target. Gives up plenty of power. Going back to last season, he actually has allowed a 219 ISO to lefties, but a 260 expected ISO. So obviously left-handed bats are where you would really like to get to, and you have no shortage of that from the Dodgers with Jock Peterson, Cody Bellinger, and Max Muncy. Corey Seager also just hitting the hell out of the ball to start the season off. Seems like he's fully healthy for the first time in a while after dealing with some elbow injuries in the past. So I think that right now the Dodgers have an implied run total approaching 6. I don't think that's surprising. I don't think they're going to go overlooked, but I do think that they are one of the top stacks here going against Samardzija.
In terms of top stacks, because obviously as everyone's listening to the show, they're trying to figure out, who are the top stacks that they should be looking at. Is there, maybe a team we haven't talked about in terms of stack that you believe people should be looking at?
Yes, I mean the Dodgers are obviously the one that jumps off the page. I think the Indians maybe, depending on ownership, you certainly could see them getting some ownership. Depends kind of how people feel about Cease, and we don't have a Vegas line yet, so that normally does a lot in terms of ownership. But they're in general, I like, if they're going to be low owned, looking to teams like this that are going against a pitcher who has really good stuff in Cease, but who struggles to throw strikes and is just really volatile. Like there's certainly a chance that he just goes out there and shuts them down. And if he's locating, that's probably going to happen because he's going to be really tough to hit, but he struggles with his command. And if he's getting behind in counts, he's going to be forced to throw fastballs over the plate to this team, and they have a ton of power. So looking to take advantage of spots like that, as long as the ownership is low, is I think a good strategy. So they would be a team that I'll be really interested to see kind of what the field's doing. And then I'll look to do the opposite.
Of course, this is the Early Bird Podcast, and of course, all day on Friday, we'll have DFS coverage over at Awesemo.com and the Awesemo YouTube channel. It all starts at 9 o'clock in the morning with the Awesemo Betting Show. Then we'll have the NBA Strategy Show with Josh and Ben. And then I'll be with Greg for the MLB Strategy Show at 11 a.m. Also, we got the NHL Strategy Show, NBA Live Before Lock, MLB Live Before Lock as well. Of course, you want to head over to Awesemo.com, and we are excited to bring you our inaugural season-long fantasy football and best ball draft kit. Using the same tools that have helped make Alex Awesemo Baker the #1 daily fantasy sports player, we have compiled a package that will revolutionize the way you prepare for fantasy football drafts. For only $29.95, our draft kit includes everything you need to prep, including rankings, projections, sleeper tools, loads of content from our experts, and the Draft Wingman, which will update team projections in real time based on who you have already drafted. As an added bonus, new FFPC members get a $35 credit when they sign up for an Awesemo draft kit, which basically makes it free. Don't miss this one. Dominate your fantasy and best ball leagues today. Of course, we'll be here all on Friday to cover for MLB. Adam, of course, let everyone know. I mean, you're a great follow on Twitter. There's times where I just sit there and just laugh at some of the things you tweet.
Yeah, Twitter's entertainment for me, but you can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS.
Of course, I am at Jason_Floyd. This is the Early Bird Podcast. We are sponsored by SuperDraft. Of course, be sure to like Awesemo here on YouTube, give it a thumbs up, or of course, also give us that 5-star review on your favorite podcasting app.